All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, per usual, what you do when you hit that play button, you get people that are here to serve you, here to help you get through whatever moment, whatever difficulties, whatever challenges you may be going through in this moment. What I do with this show, whether it's myself or a guest, we're here to just help you through that moment and sort of reinforce to you that you are not going through it alone. We are always here. This is why it's the number one podcast on innovative teamwork. Today, I have Miss Gladys Margarita Diaz, who is going to really give us a brand new approach to home buying and something that I feel like is very, very important and I know is very, very important in regards to how we put our money, how we spend our money, and how we really go about making such a huge investment. So, with all that, Gladys, welcome to the show.
All righty. All righty.
Yeah, she's ready to
Well,
roll, man. We were chatting before. We were chatting before we started recording, and you could kind of feel the energy just even through a screen that she's ready to get this thing started. So, the story I was gonna tell you, and I was waiting until we started recording before I told you is it was probably back, I'd say 16 or 15 years ago now, when my sister was looking to buy a house. And when she finally bought it, now me and my sister, we grew up very tight. And when she finally bought it, and again, we grown up together, we spend money on a lot of stupid shit like, clothes and hats and all kinds of stuff. We grew up together. Shoes,
shoes.
all of that. And when she kind of finally got the house, we had a conversation and she said, in life, all you really need is a house. I was like, that was my nickname. All you really need is a house that's paid for, and things will be really smooth. All the things we buy, and I bring that up because as you came up, there were certain approaches and certain ways that you go about home buying and certain things that you advise people on what to do and what not to do. And I'm really curious on how you dive deeper, how you, first of all, how you even got in the industry, and then dive deeper into how your philosophy is kind of differentiates from others in the typical home buying space.
Okay. How I got into, I'll answer, those were several questions, so
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
answer
yeah.
them
I know,
one
but
at a
sometimes
time.
it's loaded questions here. Like you always have your one
So
your host here to help you.
so I'm a Miami native. I grew up here. I came from Cuba when I was 5,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to school here, and then I went to college in upstate New York. And I wanted to be an
What
architect,
school in New York?
Cornell University.
Okay, I graduated from Stony Brook University in Long
Oh,
Island.
you were right
I
there.
was right
My
there.
neighbor.
Yeah,
My
right
neighbor.
there. Yes.
So you are you a tropical child? Did you grow up in Miami?
No, so I grew up in Maryland, and then I went to school in New York, and then I moved to Florida. Well, my family's from Trinidad, so my aunt lives in Cutler Bay, actually. And when I got here in South Florida, it felt like I was right at home with all the cool
Well,
and stuff.
yeah, it was quite the experience. Snow,
Yeah.
hills,
Yep. And you were there all 4 years?
ice.
All
Huh?
4 years?
Yeah, all 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that was rough.
Well, I went to UM for a while, University of Miami, and then I transferred to Cornell. I finished my undergraduate degree, which is a 5-year program, and then I finished graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
And so my master's was in urban planning and design.
Right.
So my idea was to create cities and neighborhoods and communities.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been I guess, my North Star
Right.
because, and then when I graduated, I realized I didn't know anything about business or finance. And I had a lot of dreams and I didn't know how to make them reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to work in New York. I worked for investors, and then I worked for an investment bank. And it was kind of an intriguing decade to be in New York City. I
Mm-hmm.
was the first Latina to be a registered securities broker on the equities trading floor at
Mm-hmm.
Bear Stearns and Company. I got the job for 2 reasons. I spoke Spanish and I had an Ivy League degree.
Wow.
Everything else I learned on the job. And
Right.
it was like going to graduate school for free,
Yeah.
getting paid. Like my girlfriend
Paid
said,
to do
you're
it. Yeah.
getting paid to go to grad school.
Right.
And I wanted to have a business that combined the services of design and finance, which I subsequently did. I came back to Miami to be with my family, like you did, to be with your family. And and I wanted to create, at that time, there was no funding to build anything. So I became a specialist in affordable housing finance. And I started putting together loan packages for developers who were building affordable housing projects. And then Hurricane Andrew happened, and I helped people to recover their to get funding from the grant program
Mm-hmm.
for the repair of their homes and so on. So I've
Right.
been around for a long time. I have multiple decades of experience.
Right.
And what's great about that, living a long time, is that you get to do different things at different stages of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really have had the opportunity to work in Miami-Dade County's community development area. I have financed many projects that are up and running. I know that many people do not understand how to access the second mortgages, which is really the key to affordable home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
There's one strategy that I highly recommend that doesn't require any government subsidy, which is basically to buy a property that has a rental property in the back or on the side, or it's a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you an example.
Yes.
In Coral Gables, which is the Beverly Hills of Miami,
Yeah.
all the
Very
estate
beautiful
homes,
area.
yeah,
1,020.
all the
Very
estate
nice.
homes
Mm-hmm.
have a cottage in the back and with a separate an outside garage,
Right.
and there's always a cottage upstairs or several.
Mm-hmm.
And I really mean it. Like, this really helps to offset the debt service on your property. And in Little Havana, all the older homes that were built like in the 20s and the 30s, there was always that cottage in the back
Mm-hmm.
as an affordability factor. That went away during the 60s and 70s, where people just built their own home and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That additional structure is now called an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And it's the new buzzword, but it's been around for, like, since the 20s. And I think as a vehicle for starting out, if you're a young person and you're going to invest in your first home, I would suggest finding something that has an outside cottage or something like that. Or you buy a building. You buy a 4-unit building, which you still qualify for Fannie Mae and low percentage down payment. And you
Mm-hmm.
can get a 4-unit building or a 3-unit building. And then you live in one of the apartments and you rent out the others.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then when you decide to have a family, then you go out and you get your single family home. But
Right.
I like the idea of having a secondary space,
Yeah.
because then if your elders get old and you want to have them near you, you put them there. Teenagers grow up and you want them outside the house,
Mm-hmm.
making noise. And or you have a couple, like your sister gets married and she and her husband are starting out, you
Mm-hmm.
put them in the cottage for a while.
Right.
So it gives you like this incredible amount of flexibility,
Yes.
which you don't get in, these neighborhoods that were developed in the 50s and the 60s.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I highly recommend.
So the thing that you said, I don't want it to just get brushed over, is one, you majored in architecture. My father has been an architect since the beginning, so I've seen drawings. And I know that lifestyle very well. And then you realize, hey, you still got to learn business as it pertains to how you're going to actually make it work, because that's the one thing. Architecture is artists. There's always a kind of a tug of war between being an artist and being an entrepreneur, and you have to find that proper mix. So kind of take us back, because my uncle actually was talking to me about Hurricane Andrew and what it did and how we lived through. I got to Florida right the year that Irma was here, and I was freaking out, like, oh my God, this is gonna be crazy shit. Like, I was afraid, I was really doubting the move, but he was telling me, trust me, I lived through Andrew. We gonna be all right. So luckily, they didn't hit us directly. It still caused the damage. But when Andrew happened, like, how was it when you say you were able to help people with affordable housing, you're able to create opportunities through that disaster? Can you give some sort of details in terms of how you were able to do that and how that was able to kind of, I guess, if you want to call it, kind of be the thing that catapulted you to building your own business and learning certain things?
Sure. Miami-Dade County received $1.9 billion of federal funding.
This is after
And
the storm hit and everything.
after the
All right,
storm.
all right.
And the guy who was in charge of that program, his name was Otis Pitts, may he rest in peace, was a friend of mine. Because you have to remember that when you work in affordable housing, you're always going to the county commission or the city commission to
Uh,
present your projects.
okay.
So we used to be in the trenches together.
Oh
That's the
man,
thing.
yeah, y'all were out there doing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what's up. That's all. And I hate to cut you off there, but that's another point I need to make to the listeners is sometimes the people you meet right now, the people that you meet that are in the trenches, grinding, doing what they got to do, you never know how things grow. You never know what kind of natural disasters may happen, and then you're going to depend on those relationships, and that's going to be certain things that allow you to move forward, not because of anything shady, but look, he knows your work ethic. He knows what you all about. And he's like, look, I got $1.9 billion. Gladys is the person I'm talking to with this because that's a lot of damn money. And you messed that up. You got a huge problem. So you better trust you with that.
He got nominated to be by Clinton to be the assistant secretary of HUD, and he
Okay.
got appointed as the hurricane czar. That was his
Yeah.
title.
It was just okay.
And then his right hand man was a guy that I had known from developing in Little Havana. His name
Mhm.
was Miguel Rivera.
Yeah.
And so between the two of them, they actually ran the program, and they, worked with Miami-Dade County. I had already worked with Miami-Dade County's community development office,
Uh-huh.
and they knew who I was. And so they said, listen, we need somebody who can help us, we can outsource to do the legwork on preparing these packages for the programs. Because remember, you can't do it unless you do the paperwork. And
Mhm.
a developer who's busy holding up a roof isn't going to be doing the paperwork.
Mhm.
So they would call me up and they say, we have a building and we need you to write this proposal for us. And
Mhm.
so I would put together the packages. And this is long before, this is the early 90s. The World Wide Web didn't exist. So
Oh my,
everything was like a
that's
three
surprising.
inch,
Yeah.
3 inch ring binder,
Yeah.
and you would have to put together all the data and then
Mhm.
FedEx it up to HUD or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think what happened was that I just became the person, the go-to person, and they knew that they could count on me, and they knew that I would step up to the plate if there was any issue.
Right.
And I got appointed to do the community planning workshops for the federal empowerment zone
Mhm.
later on. I don't know if you're familiar with that program.
No, no, no. Well, this was like before. I'll give you some reference. I was born in 1989. So
Okay, so
yeah,
you were a toddler
yeah, I
during
was
all
a
this.
toddler living in Brooklyn,
Well,
like and all that.
well, Al Gore and Clinton issued this program of that 10 communities around the country would receive $100 million to be implemented in a concentrated area. Because
Mhm.
one of the complaints that were happening was that the money was too dispersed. In other words, you're helping this neighborhood over here, you're helping that neighborhood over there, but
Mhm.
it's not really creating a positive effect.
Mhm.
And what is the goal? I mean, what was the goal that everybody had? Like, why were people interested in this program? Well, it was very simple. The people who went to the meetings were women, and they all said the same thing. And I conducted the workshops in Coconut Grove, downtown Miami, Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti, and Little Havana.
Mhm.
And I just named you like 6 different ethnic groups, right?
Yeah.
One message: save my kid, keep my kid out of gangs, spend this money so that you, the county, can
Mhm.
create activity centers, after school
Oh
programs,
man. Yeah.
athletic
Yeah.
programs,
Yeah.
make it so that I, who am a working woman,
Mhm.
can know that my kid is going to a place where he's going to be entertained until I
Yeah.
get home from work.
Oh my.
Because, child care is one of the biggest issues in any country,
Yeah.
and in this country as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of what I did. And I've kind of been around the community development office for
Mhm.
a long time. So
Right.
when in 2008, when we got $167 million,
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the developers that were allowed to use the funding to rehab houses that were abandoned. And I can tell you that when people get foreclosed upon, they do everything. They rip out the bathrooms and the toilets. And I mean, you walk into a house and you're like, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And, out of revenge for the banks that were
Thank,
really
thank
suppressive.
Right. So, given that you were the go-to person for a lot of this community development, what is the, I should say, I guess, what's the kind of the criteria for people that when you want to build something new? So I'm a sports guy now. When you mentioned building parks and having parks to have athletic games and tournaments and all that, what is the criteria that you look for to make it so? Because Miami, listen, there's a what's that school? Slam Academy. I've gone there several times, and I've gone to the person. I said, "Hey, I want to start a football program," and he looks at me and goes, "We have no football field. All the guys go to Northwest or they'll go to Columbus, things that are already developed, and there's no point in us trying to build a field because there's no space. I mean, Miami, it's gonna be hard to find any space. So when it comes to developing community things and activities like you mentioned to get kids out of gangs, to get them doing something productive, what is the criteria that you look for to see where the investment is going to be made?
I think the purpose of those meetings was to hear the neighborhoods,
Yeah, yeah.
which neighborhood wanted it, like who
Okay.
wants
Who
it
was gonna run?
here.
Okay, yeah.
It's more grassroots driven, like more
Yeah,
like the community driven, like
yeah.
you know the neighborhoods really want that. Everybody wanted to have an athletic program of some kind,
Yeah.
and Miami-Dade County does have a pretty good parks network. And
Yeah, they do.
so
I mean, listen, I'm going there actually. So I'm from Maryland, and my high school is like big time football program, and they're gonna be playing Columbus a week from when we're recording this. So I'm super stoked to get to Columbus and watch my alma mater from Maryland play the school in Miami that's talking a lot of mess. So I know exactly what you mean. It's one of the reasons I came out here is because the sports, the athletics out here in South Florida is unmatched.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of our growth, like everywhere there's a gross national product.
Hmm.
That's our state of Florida gross state product is
Yeah.
athletic teams and athletic people and
Did you have any
champions.
involvement? This might be off topic. Did you have any involvement at all with the Traz Powell renovation?
The what?
Traz Powell, the stadium, that renovation. It used to be, it's on, I think it's on Miami-Dade's campus, their football field, right? Traz Powell.
No.
It's all, well, Nike came in and they did a huge renovation. They basically took old Nike shoes and built the rubber turf and renovated the whole field. So it's a beautiful facility. But yeah, these are the kinds of things that happen in South Florida when it comes to that community development and all that. Anyway, go ahead. I keep,
So
because now you got me
so and
thinking. I love this shit. I love this shit. Anyway, go.
so if you go back, you're like, okay, I want to live in a neighborhood that has a park.
Mm-hmm.
I want to live in a neighborhood where my kid can go after school, he can go to the park and he
Mm-hmm.
can participate and he can have a coach that's going to give him, if it's not offered by the school, which some
Yeah.
schools don't,
Right.
the smaller schools don't have the athletic team. So
Mm-hmm.
then you have to belong to the community team. What community team do you want to belong to?
Yeah.
And so I think Miami-Dade has a pretty good network of parks, and the expenditure is hiring, who's going to coach the kids, who's going
Right.
to give them the uniforms, how are they going to get the equipment, all the things that go with being in the athletic world.
Right.
And I think that's the part that the Parks and Recreation, and they get sponsors, and like you said,
Right.
the Nike came in and they did their thing.
Mm-hmm.
I focused on housing my
Yeah.
and neighborhoods
Right.
and how to create the ability for people to be eligible to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in time, the prices are so high that it's really challenging for any single person. If you are making a lot of money, great, but if not, it has to be a two-income family
Yes.
or a multi-income family,
I
like
agree.
mom and dad and son and
I agree.
sister, and
I
you
agree.
know
To me, it's not worth
and
the investment if you're gonna be doing it by yourself. And this is where again, so it's so important that these decisions are made mutually. They're not made just because you want to be in a home or because you're shacking up with someone because there's no legal right there. You know, you wake up one day and all of a sudden relationship don't work. You got kids to feed. It's a mess, and you're starting to get into that. And I'm sure we're going to dive a little bit more into that. But it's a mess when it comes to some of the decisions that a lot of people make towards getting into a home, and like you mentioned, the foreclosures happen and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Well, the decision that you make has to do with your, and I've talked about it in other podcasts,
yeah.
intelligence of buying real estate. You know, why do you buy
Oh
real
yeah,
estate? You
AI,
buy
yeah,
it
right.
because you want to feel that you belong in that neighborhood and that you feel that this is where you're going to be safe and where you're going to like make friends and you're going to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're close to the grocery store and you're close to the coffee place. And so grocery stores and coffee places are like the number one search item, by the way. You
Yeah,
know,
oh
how
man.
close is it to the coffee place?
Right.
And so basically what's happening now is that we're trying to figure out solutions to
Mhm.
allowing people to qualify. I think that getting, you know, buying properties that have additional structures that you can rent out is a good way to guarantee affordability, you know, and to at least cover your debt service and not have to really strain economically. So I think that that's the future. I think that living in communities, you like to have a place where you can keep your elders,
Mhm.
because let's say an elderly person owns a 4-bedroom house, they can't maintain it, they can't keep track of it, but you live halfway across the city and it's 35 minutes to go see them every day. It's a long trip. So the
Mhm.
best thing to do is build something that you can then have them close to you
Mhm.
and sell that house, that big 4-bedroom house, and make money.
Mhm.
And those are the kind of things that, you know, every family is different, situations are different, but I think that there's always a solution. This is the thing, this is what I believe in. There's nothing that you can't confront, and there's always a solution that is available. And there are resources to,
Right.
so
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, and I wanted to, because you had mentioned utilizing AI in regards to how you go about finding it. Can you go into a little more detail on that? Because AI is the new,
well,
no, it's the new
it's
way
the new thing, right? The new
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
So I did a research about this is something that I tell everybody.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to talk to anyone and everyone when you go out, because this is I've gotten great things happened because I just turned to the person next to me and said, "Hi, what's your name?" You know?
Mhm.
And I did that, and I met this guy who is a wonderful individual. He was the CEO of a company that had been involved in data analytics. And
Mhm.
I pitched him the idea, let's do an app that helps people find properties visually.
Mhm.
Because right now, if you look for property, you're looking at a bunch of numbers and a lot of graphs, and you can't really search by style,
Mhm.
and you can't really search by neighborhood. And so I started, we've been working on it, and he's got the engineers doing the algorithm and all that. And basically, we're looking at launching an app in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
Mhm.
which is going to allow people to price what they're looking at. In other words, you say, I'm looking at this house. How much should I pay for it?
Mhm.
And it tells you these are the comparables, this is what you could pay, etc. So that when you make an offer for a property, you're not going crazy. And it
Mhm.
also saves the real estate agent a lot of time,
Right.
because one of the biggest things, like when a person says, okay, I'd like to make an offer, then I have to sit down and go through the MLS and do an analysis
Mhm.
of what is available in the marketplace, what is sold, what hasn't sold, how long was it on the market, all these technical things.
Right.
Let the AI do it.
Right.
Let the AI figure it out.
Mhm.
And part of our app will have visual conditions of the property. In other words, the property will have like images,
Mhm.
and you can say this property is in this condition And Fannie Mae, which is the entity that buys mortgages, has a grading system. And we are going to align with that grading system. This property is A, B, C, D. You know, they have their criteria. So that when you put the offer in, you know that your property is going to qualify for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or any one of those vehicles.
Right.
That's what I've been working on, and that's launching soon. I've also been working on a neighborhood app that basically helps you to find the neighborhood of your dreams. And it has a lot of criteria. And you just mentioned people want to be in a neighborhood that has parks, a neighborhood that has the grocery store, that has sidewalks where people can walk and say, hi, how are you? Et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And unfortunately, the bigger houses with larger lots of land are more isolated.
Right.
So you don't have the same social camaraderie in those neighborhoods that you have in the neighborhoods with smaller lots and smaller houses, believe it or not. It's a
So,
social thing.
so just so we're clear though, so the potential buyer is going to be able to have this, like this, pull out this phone, have an app, and they have to know what it is they want in their neighborhood first, right? And when they look
In
at
this particular
right,
app, yes.
right, and they know their budget and all that, and then they're able to look at it and say, okay, I can see myself and my family living there, and that's where they're not. I mean, do you worry sometimes about possibly, driving out the realtor completely or driving out the real estate agent completely because people are gonna know what they want going in? Like, how do you, I guess, sort of, how do you make it so you don't remove the need for an actual agent?
Well, first of all, I am an agent. My husband's
Oh,
the
so yeah, you've
broker.
been there. Yeah, you've been there. All right, cool. All right.
Yeah, so
You
that's what we do. We're
firsthand
not going to put
experience. All right.
ourselves,
All
I don't
right.
want to put myself out of business.
Yeah, all right, all
What
right.
I
Because
want to
because
do,
sometimes you gotta know, man. Hey, look, man, you're supposed to be one of us.
yeah. Well, I think what happens is that, I don't know, when I lived in New York, there was a store called Sims, which is where you got your designer clothes at a discount. And their mantra was, an educated consumer is my best customer.
Ooh,
So the
big one.
more
Yeah, that is.
you
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
customer
yeah.
know, the more educated you are, the more I can help you understand the market and understand what your needs are. Because people sometimes don't even know. They're like, oh, I don't know what I like.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
Educated, right?
what style are you? Okay. Oh, I don't know what style I like. I said,
Right.
okay, when you watch a movie, which house makes you happy? The house from Home Alone or the house from, Dune? Like,
Yeah,
pick a
yeah.
style.
Right.
And so people are like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So you have that opportunity to educate the consumer, to give him data, to be transparent. Hey, this is what's really going on in the marketplace. So then you could provide the assistance of really refining what it is that they can get and how they can find it, and negotiating, because
Right.
that is where the rubber meets the road.
It is. Yeah.
you know
Definitely. Right.
yeah, what is it, getting to yes, or whatever you want to call it. It's really about negotiating on behalf of your customer.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been representing buyers for 20 years. That's been our bread and butter. We're not listing people, we're buyers representatives. So
Okay.
this change in the market and all that doesn't phase us too much, because
Mm-hmm.
we've always been representing the buyer and helping them figure out, what did they want, what did they qualify for, where do they want to be, what planet do they want to live on. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah. It's a lot.
planet Little Havana or planet Pinecrest, which
Right.
one, where do you think you want to be happy? You're
Or
going to be
even
happy.
Brickell's I apparently I've heard Brickell's a pretty nice area as well too. So
Brickell's beautiful, but
yeah.
it's an urban environment.
Right.
There's urban, there's suburban, there's
Yeah.
urban suburban, then there's suburban, then
Yeah.
there's ex-urban. As you get further out, and then there's rural. So
Right.
as you get more distant from the core of the county or the city of the community, then you're going to be a little bit more isolated, and the place is going to look different, and aesthetically it's going to be a little bit more distant, the houses and so on. So it varies.
Right.
And I think that we have an opportunity. Miami-Dade County is really cool. Miami-Dade County, I don't know if you realize, has an employment belt.
Employment belt.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's a belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
The port, downtown Miami and Brickell,
Hmm.
the Civic Center, the medical center, which is Jackson, which employs a lot of people,
Yeah.
the airport, and then the logistics center west of the airport. I mean, think about it. It goes east to west.
I never actually.
That's the
My
employment.
uncle, my uncle works for the. Well, he's going to be retiring soon, but he's worked for the port, and I've gone on several cruises. So I know, like now that you're saying it, I could see what you mean. Like that part, it employs a lot of people, especially that hospital that you mentioned.
The Jackson Hospital is huge,
It's
and
huge.
it's a global facility. It's very well known and respected. So if you think about the different industries
Hmm.
that are housed in that, then you either live north of the belt or south of the belt, because Miami-Dade County is a rectangle. So you live up here or down here, and you're going to be closer or further away. And as you get further away, there's other nodes, what's called, urban nodes,
Hmm.
where like Aventura, Sunny Isles, that area has
Yeah.
become a node.
Another amazing looking area, beautiful area.
Yeah. So, and then now Homestead is becoming like a node. It's looking for, but the driver is employment and business. It's
Exactly.
always like who are you gonna work for? And you
Hmm.
want to live near your work. That's what
Right.
people want.
And
You don't want that.
the thing is too, and just be clear, I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for, but I do think it's important that in these times when people are talking about what's going to be affordable or what is going to be the things that's going to help communities, if you, I guess I'll ask it like this: if you were running politics, or if you were kind of the person that was in charge, what do you recommend we do to make it so things become more affordable? Well, I mean, you sort of
what would be
mentioned,
what
yeah.
would be my housing policy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like yeah, exactly. What would be your housing policy?
Um, First of all, I want to point out that I'm the chair of the Architectural Review Committee for the Housing Finance Authority.
Hmm.
So every developer that builds multifamily apartment buildings for affordable housing
Hmm.
has to go through me. And I have been doing this since 1997. So all of the buildings that have been built. And one of the criteria is that the buildings have to create a community, number
Uh,
one, and they have to feel like they are a marketplace.
okay.
And there's a waiting list of like 10 million people because
Yeah.
nobody ever moves out, and they're super well maintained and they're
Yeah.
beautiful and they look like
Huh.
high-end residential.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example. um you know where the Marlins Stadium is?
Yeah, that's where I with Slam Academy. I was there.
Okay,
I've
across the
actually
street
been
from the
at the
Marlin
stadium.
so across the street from the Marlins Stadium to the north,
Hmm.
there are all these brand new buildings,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Do they look, do they look expensive or do they look cheap?
I, when I went there, I don't know if I noticed it, but they didn't look to me. They didn't look. Now I'm thinking about it, they didn't look that cheap, no.
They're all affordable housing.
And they all went
Section
through
8.
you.
Hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. So I have seen these developers and they've been building these beautiful buildings.
Right.
They look like market rate. The rents are subsidized.
Hmm.
So I interviewed a person who lived there. He lived in a one bedroom. He paid $300 a month in that building.
Hmm.
And that developer does a fantastic job.
Right.
So all it takes is creating policy that it's going to set guidelines for how people develop.
Yeah.
So all of these properties that are being developed are financed through low income housing tax credits.
Hmm.
And 98% of the nation's affordable housing is funded through tax credits.
Hmm.
And the way the tax credit program works is that you as a developer get allocated, like I'm building a $10 million building. I
Hmm.
get 4% tax credits, and those 4% tax credits I can sell in the market to give me equity so that I can afford to rent it out for less. Those tax credits
Yeah.
are bought by high net worth companies,
Mm-hmm.
Apple, Samsung. So the affordable housing is paid for or subsidized or catalyzed by, wealthy entities,
Mm-hmm.
so
Right.
if you increase the ability of those guys to get more benefits, you're going to get more capital invested into these projects. That's the way the mechanics work. And
Right.
not everybody knows about this. It's a very narrow type of information. It's not
Right.
not every funding source understands it. But if you think about it, that's something that I would talk to the IRS and say,
Mm-hmm.
how can we increase the allocation in each state so that we have more tax credits to give to the developers so that they build more properties that really look good? And why don't we do it so that we can use it for single family development,
Mm-hmm.
not multifamily,
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know if you're considering it, but I think you should at least run for something, and because you would definitely get my vote in terms of because
I think I think I think they can call me and they can appoint me to
they're
something.
gonna point you to
That I
something.
don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Running, and I don't know. That's
yeah,
too much.
they'll
It's
be the ones to call you or point you to something because you're right. It's an area that a lot of people want to live, but I've heard so many people say, look, they just can't afford to live there. And with your knowledge and what you're all about, you make a way. You have created a way. And what I just learned personally, but what you said is you make it so people have to have the plan of building a community, and they can't like there's a guardrail there where you just can't build and not have any plans on expanding and making the community better. So it really boils down to your intention. And that's what's crazy about it. Like it boils down to the person who is making the investment and what is your intention when it comes to what it is you want to do with your money. And I'm glad people like you exist to make it so people are doing
Well,
the right things.
don't be mistaken. They
Mhm.
make money. Developers always,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, no
this is
doubt. You have to. Yeah,
it's
you
a
have to make
market,
money. You have to make
it's a
money.
market driven economy.
Yeah,
Even
you
the
have to. Yeah,
nonprofit developers make a lot of money. The
damn right.
difference is that
They deserve it though.
they have to reinvest it
Yeah,
in projects. They can't distribute it as dividends.
yeah.
But the world of affordable housing development is driven by for-profit developers
Exactly.
that are interested in creating projects. And it's not for the faint of heart because it's usually a capital stack, which means a lot of different sources of funding. It's a complicated process, but they still do it. And
Exactly.
they do it with love, and they love what they do, and they create really good stuff.
Right.
And I call them the usual suspects, like they come to the meetings and I'm like, oh, we're going to see a project by so and so. Yes, yes, he's one of our regulars.
Oh man.
And it's very cool, and I like seeing what they've done. They've done beautiful work. And I've had the opportunity, one of my students actually that came to Miami to do an internship with me. I
Mhm,
used to sponsor interns in Miami to
mhm,
learn how affordable housing is developed.
mhm.
And so this one particular young girl, she called me up and she says, I have to tell you that I just got appointed by Biden to be the national director of housing services for HUD. And she said, and I owe it to you because I did my internship at Miami-Dade Housing. So,
I told
you
you
know,
you have. I mean, listen. I watch lately. I've been watching a lot of politics. I grew up in the Maryland, D.C. area, so I've been around them. I could see it when I see someone that'd be good for it. I know someone that would be good for it. So, shout out to the intern.
I don't know if I
Congrats
can
to you if
take
you're
that.
listening. First of all, congrats. That's an amazing, amazing way to get in the door because you are coming from a place where you're actually serving the community and you're doing something productive. And I do want to be very respectful of your time. So before I let you go, can you just please tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to hear more, if they want to really dive into. I know that especially young entrepreneurs, young architects, people that may be lost in the school system, they would love to
Oh,
connect with you in some sort of way.
I love mentoring students.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
Okay. LinkedIn is my channel of choice.
Hmm.
And you can look me up, Gladys Margarita Diaz Jourdain, because that's my married name.
Okay.
And it's at GladMag Diaz
Hmm.
on, I think on Twitter, that's my handle.
Okay.
And I'm available. Just email me. I mean, send me a message and say I'd really like to talk to you about this, that, or the other thing.
Hmm.
And I can tell you, I mean, I do what I can. I'm doing
Yeah.
my thing. I'm creating applications so that home buyers have transparent data so that
Right.
they can choose where they want to live and what they want to do. I like helping people figure out their lives,
Yeah.
and I know that there's, the possibility everything is, you can solve anything.
Hmm. It is a beautiful feeling to have those keys, to own it, to do it the right way. Because I'm a firm believer in, marriage, house, then the kid. Like, do it in that order, and things
Oh,
will.
you follow the sequence?
I think I've seen too much shit, Gladys. I've seen things go bad really fast. I've seen people lose their homes. I've seen people sleeping out of situations that if I was to start that with you, it'd go in a completely different direction. But I'm a firm believer, you meet someone, you get married, you buy a house, and then you start the family because of a lot of the things you just said. The plan and the people that are building these properties and the good people, they're about communities. They want to help young upstarts and people that are doing productive work, and you want to weed out the folks that are just kind of there, not being productive to the community. It's a detriment, like you said, gangs and people raising their families and wanting them to be better. I'm a believer in that. I think that's incredibly important, especially when you're talking about all the nonsense that goes on in this world.
And even gangs.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a
there is
that's a
hope.
huge thing with my back. I mean, I didn't grow up in Miami, but my cousin, he grew up in Cutler Bay, so he would tell me, it's pretty serious when it comes to gangs, especially out there in South Miami. Liberty
Well,
City.
I'm familiar with these programs that are out in LA
Yeah.
that have been very dynamic in terms of engaging with the gangs and
Hmm.
dealing with, helping them to define who they are and what they want to do. And
Exactly.
because what is the purpose? Why do people challenge the system the way they do? It's because
Mhm.
they feel that they have no options.
Exactly. You beat me to it. That's exactly what I was gonna say. It's only a matter of just misguided anger and not knowing that there are options for you to just, get your shit together, get into a nice home, develop a family and build something that's worth that's gonna be around if God forbid you're not around. So
Get some financial literacy,
financial literacy, that's a big word
you
in
know.
over here in the Move Swiftly world. So I'm glad you mentioned it. So the way
Yes.
I close out all the shows, Gladys, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are young Gladys, you're majoring in architecture, you're in Cornell, you're in the snow, you're like, what the hell am I going to do? All that. I want you to pretend that that version of you has come into the Zoom room. Just give that young lady some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do something completely different than what everybody expects you to do.
Hmm.
Go after your what you think you want to do. And don't be afraid to combine your knowledge and do things that nobody else has done. Because I think that sometimes young people get, oh, I'm going to do this, and they get tied up into that channel or this channel. But if you see something that's interesting,
Hmm.
where you can use the skills you developed in these two other channels and put them to work, then by all means, don't be afraid. Even if it's not something that you expected to do. In a million years, when I was 22 years old and going to trudging through the snow to get to class, if you had told me that I was going to be doing an artificial intelligence application, if you had told me that I was going to be financing affordable housing, I would tell you like, how? I don't know. How am I going to get there?
Yes.
It's not clear right now. Just go. Just keep going.
Just keep going. That is, yeah. I have absolutely nothing to add to that. Again, appreciate the work you're doing. Please, please stay in touch. And, we got to link up seeing that you're out here in South Florida. You could definitely expect me to reach out to you for damn sure. If nobody else, I will definitely be reaching out for some
Please.
advice and all that good stuff. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.